While the dossier was being written, there still wasn't any evidence of the Trump campaign colluding with Russia, so Team Hillary decided to trump some up. Mysterious and shadowy figures had been approaching the Trump campaign left and right, and somebody should have told the manager of Trump Tower to call the exterminator, because there were about to be some rats in the building. June 9th of 2016 was the date the infamous Trump Tower meeting took place, and just like the George Papadopoulos portion of the Spygate saga, all was not as it seemed. The optics weren't good, but nothing illegal happened at this meeting, and Donald Trump Jr. released the email chain leading up to the meeting to the public. Donald Trump Jr. received an email from Rob Goldstone, a publicist he knew from a golf tournament, promising Russian dirt on Hillary if he took a meeting with some Russians. But the Russians in the meeting never provided any dirt on Hillary. Trump Jr.'s brother-in-law, Jared Kushner, left the meeting after 5 minutes, and Paul Manafort fell asleep. Instead of dirt, the Russians talked about adoption and getting Trump Sr. to repeal the Magnitsky Act. The Magnitsky Act placed sanctions on human rights violating Russian businessmen. In response to the sanctions, Russia stopped allowing Americans to adopt Russian children. About a year later, when the story came to light, the fake news media jumped all over this story and said this was the meeting that proved the Trump campaign colluded with Russia, or at the very least, Donald Trump Jr. attempted to collude with the Russians.
Some people have said this could be treason. For the love of God, treason is defined in the Constitution. This is not treason. One said, well, if you take things of tangible value under the campaign laws and treat information like that, then maybe you have a campaign contribution violation. Well, yeah, but we haven't seen that done. You could also treat it like a panda and say it's an endangered species violation. You know, this was a meeting where someone said they had evidence of a possible crime by the opponent of the Trump campaign. They met with this person. I think a lot of people in the city view that as naive. I think a lot of people say, my God, why didn't you use a surrogate, which is how it's done in Washington? But that itself is not a crime. The fact is campaigns and aides meet with foreign leaders and nationals all the time. They share information about trade and other issues. Sometimes they share information that runs against their opponent in a campaign. That is fairly routine.
They didn't ask any questions or do any kind of critical thinking. No one said, if Trump Sr. is really in bed with the Russians, why then would Putin send a Russian lawyer all the way to America without any of the dirt that was supposedly, quote, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump, unquote? If Putin says, hey, I'm sending a box full of stuff to show how much I support you, and then when you open that box, it's completely empty, wouldn't that actually prove that Putin doesn't support you and that you're not in league with him? This story doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is because those weren't regular Russians that entered Trump Tower. Former Soviet counterintelligence officer Rinat Akhmetshin and attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya were two of the Russians in that meeting. Veselnitskaya was no Trump fan, and Akhmetshin disliked the entire Trump family, had met Hillary Clinton, was friendly with many of her campaign members, and his lawyer and personal advisor, Edward Lieberman, just so happened to be married to Bill Clinton's former deputy chief of staff and close Hillary Clinton confidant, Evelyn Lieberman. Rinat Akhmetshin and attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya were both working with the same man. That man had been working with Veselnitskaya for years, assisting Russia's efforts to help overturn the Magnitsky Act. That man met with Veselnitskaya for dinner the day before and the day after the Trump Tower meeting, and Veselnitskaya told NBC that he prepared her talking points for the meeting. That man was none other than Glenn Simpson of FusionGPS.
Well, the Russians that are involved in the Trump Tower, the infamous Trump Tower meeting in New York, I call them the FusionGPS Russians. FusionGPS was the company that was working for the Clinton campaign and the Democrats, and somehow Glenn Simpson meets with them before and after, and he's actually, these are Russians that he's doing work for. I mean, come on.
Even though he met Veselnitskaya the day before and the day after, Simpson later testified that he was completely unaware of the most important meeting his clients would ever attend for a project FusionGPS received over $500,000 for. It's equally funny that Simpson, who spent over a decade vilifying Paul Manafort for working with the pro-Russian president of the Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, while Simpson himself was working directly with the Russians to destroy U.S. legislation. Veselnitskaya had previously been in the country through a special dispensation known as immigration parole. Her attempt to renew her immigration parole was blocked by a U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara. Bharara denied her immigration parole in March of 2016, stating that she did not need to return to the United States to work on a legal case she was involved in unless she was serving in the capacity of a witness, which she was not. Someone had Obama's State Department override Bharara's decision and allowed a self-professed informant for the Russian government.
Информатора, то есть я являюсь адвокатом, и я являюсь информатором.
To enter the country on a B1/B2 non-immigrant visa in June of 2016, just in time for the Trump Tower meeting. These Russians were either Putin's worst agents because they were unable to deliver a simple message, all while being spearheaded by criminal mastermind Rob Goldstone, or there was no derogatory information provided about Hillary Clinton because these Russian agents were also FusionGPS operatives working on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the DNC to set the Trump campaign up.
The Trump Tower meeting was an obvious setup where you had FusionGPS, the Clinton campaign operative machine, that was involved in that entire setup. There's numerous examples like this, so I don't think people should forget this. This is a scandal.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and please share it. You can help us continue to fight in the war against disinformation by donating at paypal.me/rightleftofcenter and at subscribestar.com/rightleftofcenter. I'm Right from Right Left of Center, and if you're watching, you're probably right too.